Hello, everyone. Just as I get started, I'm going to ask you to do me that favor, which is last week we had horrible problems with pixelation and I was not talking correctly with the sound and I was really pissed off. I have no idea what went wrong, but I just want to make sure you can all see me clearly, hear me clearly before we have another unfortunate, 2 hours of, boy, that was annoying. Awesome. Thank you, Martin. I'm glad. Okay. It's these, when you do YouTube, when you do StreamYard, most of the time it works, but every once in a while something goes wrong and you have no idea why. And it really is annoying. So before I start today, I want to, some of you have been paying attention to my ills for the last few days. On Wednesday, I'm going to tell you, this is kind of a crime issue. So I'm going to get to, guys, I'm going to, wait a minute. I forgot to do the needful. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. I always forget to do the needful. So I got to do it. Where is it? Okay, I've lost my mind here this morning. Okay, what happened to my thing? Oh, no, here it is. Oh, sorry. I'm going to be normal in a minute, maybe. Maybe before I do anything, I've got to do the needful because we have to support the channel. So there's lots of options. You can join Patreon and support the channel. And if you support at the higher level, you can join my Hangouts, which are once a week and they're a lot of fun. And you're a special group. You can ask all the questions you want, even if I don't know the answers, but I will answer them. Or you can just simply subscribe to the channel because subscribing helps. Also, like the videos, share with people, and don't forget to hit that little bell thing because people keep saying, "Why am I not getting notified?" Because you didn't hit the bell. Although sometimes YouTube screws up, but hit the bell. So also over here, Only the Truth is one of my fiction books. It's $2.99 on Amazon, a cheap deal. You get a great story. $2 goes to the channel, and also below you have other links you can also link to. So everything is below. So you just look in the description. You'll find the Patreon links. You'll find the book links. You'll find everything. Okay, that's enough of that. Okay, so now back to the story. All right, so my story. Okay, so this is a little thing I'm going to tell you about just simply because it's I want you to understand how investigation works. So on Wednesday, I picked up my granddaughter from gymnastics. Well, no, wait a minute. Let me back up. I took her to gymnastics, and now we're required to wear a mask for an hour while we sit there. And it's kind of unpleasant. So what I usually do is run away for like a half hour and come back, and then I see the end of it. I go, "Oh, I saw you." And so I ran off to Whole Foods because I thought, here's a great opportunity to buy my dinner. So I went to the salad bar. I bought a kale salad and a beet salad. And then I ran back to the gym. I saw her do some flippy things. I went, wasn't that cute? And then I went home and she went home. And then I sat down and ate my lovely raw salad. And 3 hours later, I started having stomach pain. And then I started having severe diarrhea. And that whole night was like, I was running back and forth. It was very unpleasant. And this went on for a number of days. So I did notify Whole Foods, hey, I ate at your salad bar and I think I have food poisoning from your salad bar. But then people ask me, it's like, well, do you know that? And I'm like, good point. Could be a COVID symptom. I have had the shot, so the vaccine. But there are those breakthrough vaccine things. So I'm thinking maybe I do have COVID. And I started looking it all up, and diarrhea is one of the symptoms you can have, and you can have it for days, and then it gets worse. So I'm like, I got medication in my cabinet. I've got hydroxychloroquine. I've got azithromycin, all from India, where you can get them over the counter. And I've been to India, so stocked up. And so I had that waiting, and I'm like, well, if this continues, it might be an issue. So it continued for 5 days. And I'm like, this is weird food poisoning. So today I followed people's advice. I went to CVS. Actually, I went to 3 CVSs. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to tell you this part. So I wake up. I'm starting to get paranoid. And I'm like, wait, I'm having trouble breathing. everything feels very tight. Then I realized I gained like 40 pounds during COVID and my bras don't fit. So, that could be the problem. But I went to CVS. I went to 3 of them before I found a home test kit. I tested, I came back negative, and now things are getting better. So thank you, Whole Foods. It's you, not COVID. But, when you run into situations where you have to analyze things, even for yourself, it can be difficult. And people say, well, what did Whole Foods do? And I'm like, okay, here's how it works, folks. I call Whole Foods and I say, look, I had this issue. I ate your kale salad, and 3 hours later, I food poisoning hit. And they said, well, thank you very much. And what is your name? And what is your phone number? And darn well, you're never going to hear back from them. And the whole point of reporting is so that if they get other reports, then they can say something went wrong. But they're never going to tell you if they got the other reports. They're always going to say, you're the only one. And you can't prove there were other reports. So maybe they got 30 reports. Everybody's got food poisoning, but they're not going to admit it. So what happens is they may say to their staff, hey, you all screwed up. You got to fix this up because we got 30 reports of food poisoning. But they're never going to admit it because it opens them up to a lawsuit. And so they're going to say, you're the only one who's ever said that. So you're kind of screwed. So yes, I've had food poisoning for 5 days. So if I vanish from the video for a minute, you know why. But I think I'm getting better. I'm feeling pretty good. So anyway, let's get to this case, which is a really interesting one. And the Sherri Papini case is, it brings in a lot of issues from a lot of other cases. And so I'm going to try to help you understand what all of this means, because we have a problem. And we've seen this recently with a number of cases that the public gets overly involved with cases. And I did a PSA on that exact thing, because a public service announcement, because I'm like, hey, you're all getting overly involved. You're, a lot of rumors are spreading. The police are getting tips that have nothing to do with the case. It's messing up the investigation. So, but the thing is, people are curious. People are wondering, what does this actually mean? What has actually happened? So what I want to do with, sorry, I just have to stop here because Lisa says, wait a minute, where's Lisa? Wait a minute, where are you, Lisa? Lisa says, maybe you'll lose 40 extra pounds with all the diarrhea. Don't I wish? Hell no. I wouldn't be that lucky. This has been a crappy coronavirus season for Pat Brown, let me tell you. I used to look like this, not look like this. Anyway, so, but I'm still here, so I'm not going to complain. So let's take a look at what's happening with Sherri Papini and what this all means. So the Sherri Papini case, some of you may be unfamiliar with the case. I'm going to read a very quick description of it that I wrote once in my blog. Jogger, wife, and mother of 2, 34-year-old Sherri Papini disappeared while out for her afternoon run on November 2nd, 2016, reappearing on Thanksgiving Day on the side of the road 150 miles away from her home in the wee hours of the morning. A chain around her waist and one hand, and also she had some of those ties, waving a paper bag and screaming out for help. Sherri Papini finally was brought home. According to her husband, she suffered beatings, burning, and branding while she was in captivity of 2 Hispanic women and was abducted at gunpoint by these 2 women in the middle of the day. It seems that Mrs. Papini remembers nothing of her days in captivity and can only give a vague description of the 2 women because either she had her head covered or they had their faces covered most of the time. There are many people out there who think this whole abduction claim is a hoax. Her husband furiously attacked these people in a statement, and I'll get to the statement later. But let's talk about what is a hoax. Oh, thank you. Oh, wait a minute. I'm looking for Julius. Zip ties. One of the reasons I do live is because I have a shitty memory, and it's really nice that everybody comes in and fills in for me. Yeah, okay, zip ties, that would be it. just in case you think it's Alzheimer's, I have to tell you the funniest story from Nancy Grace. And this happened like, oh my God, I was 40 in my early 40s. And we're on the show, Nancy Grace, and she says, so Pat, what do you think the people are doing? And I said, Nancy, I think the people they're all signing their names to this form, and putting all their names in a row. And then they're signing it and they're sending it into the governor. And she goes, you mean a petition, Pat? And I'm like, that would be the word. That happened 20 years ago on live TV. So there you go. So, I haven't gotten any worse. All right. So let's go to what is a hoax, because this is the underlying issue of the Sherri Papini case. And it's fascinating because we have a lot of issues with hoaxes these days. And it's gotten worse with the internet. So what is a hoax? A hoax is basically something where a person decides they can pull the wool over on somebody. It could be the police. Here's one way that happens. There are women who go to the police and claim they have been raped. And there are people out there in the world who are anti-rape advocates, which is a wonderful thing. Supporting of women, which is a wonderful thing, who will tell you women don't lie about rape. I hate to tell you this, but yes, they do. Yes, they do. Some women will lie like a dog about rape. I have a story, and I'm going to tell you this, but I can't tell you where I got it from, but I'm going to tell you the story. So anyway, this woman called, the police are called about a rape, and the police arrive, and the woman is there, and she's 7 months pregnant. Or 8 months pregnant. She's pregnant, very pregnant. And she comes out, she tells them, they come into the house. They say, what's going on? She says, I was raped by my husband's friend. And they're like, seriously? You were raped by your husband's friend? And what happened? Well, he came to see my husband, and my husband wasn't here, so he raped me. And they're like, well, where is that dude now? And she goes, well, he's outside on the doorstep, sitting there. Okay. So they go outside and they say to the dude, hey, dude, did you rape the girl inside there? And he went, hell no, I didn't rape that girl. And they said, well, she says she did. And he goes, oh no, I can prove I didn't. Here's the video. Police went, okay, never mind. So yes, women do sometimes lie about rape. And it's one of the things that makes me so angry, because it sheds doubt on all the real accusations of rape, which is why I'm so strong about, if you lie about rape, you should go to prison. That's my belief. Because first of all, you could ruin a man's life, and you could ruin other women's lives who have actually been raped. So I'm totally for, if you lie about rape, nail them and put them in prison. So hoaxes are a really serious thing. But there are hoaxes of many sorts. One of the hoaxes we see these days is a hoax for money. We see it on the internet because, you've got these GoFundMe campaigns type of thing. Oh my God, this happened to me. Please send me money. Oh, my son is suffering terribly. He's got cancer, terminal cancer. Please send money so he can have his last vacation. And the son is perfectly healthy, or she doesn't even have a son. So the reach out for money with hoaxes is very, very strong. So that's one reason. Does anybody remember Balloon Boy? That was a hoax and a half. So hoaxes happen for amusement. Hoaxes happen for money. Hoaxes happen for attention. There's lots of reasons we got hoaxes out there. So the problem is, how do we know when it is a hoax and when it isn't a hoax? And this was the problem with this particular case. How do we know that Sherri Papini was really abducted and it wasn't a hoax? Okay, let me go to another reason for hoaxes. So one hoax is that you can get money off of people and whatever game you're playing. Another version of hoaxes is a person who suffers from Munchausen syndrome, usually female. And people say, what is Munchausen syndrome? Okay. Munchausen syndrome. Most of us hear about Munchausen syndrome by proxy. That's when usually a woman, but it can be a man, but usually a woman, will then go to a doctor, for example, and she'll say, my son is having problems with allergies, but her son doesn't have problems with allergies. And so the doctor runs him through a whole pile of tests that are unnecessary, and maybe even gives allergy medicine, which she then administers to her son, who is perfectly fine. Sometimes they'll claim that their child has seizures, which are never seen when they're actually at the doctor's. So there's lots of claims. You take your child in and you go over and over and over and visit the doctor, and you basically torture your child for attention. Some of these women take that onto the internet, and they'll claim that their child has been, their child has all these different conditions. They'll get a tremendous amount of attention, and oh my God, the sympathy. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know what you're struggling with. And these people have no idea they're being played, because they have sympathy, they have a heart, and they're being used. So Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And then here's the worst version of Munchausen. Then I will do Munchausen syndrome by proxy. I'll do a whole show on that. Is when you kill your child to get attention. And people are really shocked by that, but that happens. You have a baby and everybody goes, oh my God, it's such a cute baby. And they're really annoyed because people are more interested in the baby than you. But during the pregnancy, they were more interested in you. But after then you got presents. And then when the baby's born, damn it, they give presents to the baby and not you. How dare they? And then you get really annoyed. And then you have to take care of the stupid thing, and then it starts getting boring. And a lot of work. So you kill the baby, and then everybody goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Your baby died. Oh, that's such a shame. You get a great funeral. And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, because it works. Mary Beth Tinning, she had 9 children she murdered. And they only caught up with her. 8 children had died of crib death, and she got away with it. And then on the 9th child, they kept thinking it was genetic. But on the 9th child, the child was adopted. And they're like, wait a minute, maybe it's not genetic. And then she finally got put away. Meanwhile, her husband's like, I thought she was a great mother. So this is Munchausen syndrome by proxy, but there's also a thing called Munchausen syndrome, which, and by the way, the whole term Munchausen syndrome is stupid, because it's not a syndrome. It's just a form of narcissism. It's a form of narcissism where you like to get attention through either hurting your children or pretending you're hurting your children, or pretending about your children being in trouble of some sort, or you have that about yourself. So if you have Munchausen syndrome, just Munchausen syndrome, that simply means you're a narcissist who loves attention. So you will say things that happen to you. Oh my God, I've been so sick. You don't really know if I had food poisoning, do you now? That could be a lie. And I've got all your sympathy. I love it. But this is what they do. So they'll go on the internet and they'll say, I know I have cancer, when they don't have cancer. They'll say all kinds of things on the internet, because the internet is so great for getting attention. And then they sometimes tell their husbands things that the husbands will believe. Do you know, I knew a person once who pretended she had a brain tumor. She actually like shaved a piece of her head and went out to go to the doctor to go get testing done and to go get radiation on her brain tumor that she did not have. And her husband was like, oh, my wife has brain tumor. Like, no, she doesn't. It was amazing. But that's Munchausen syndrome. I have a lot of emails that come into me, a lot of emails of women who claim they are being stalked. Again, Munchausen syndrome, in the sense that they're a narcissist who wants attention. I mean, oh my God, I'm being stalked. There are people listening to me, and there's guys following me on the street. Don't you wish? Because, really nobody's following you. And I know immediately they're lying. And the first thing I do is say, what evidence do you have? And guess what they have? 0, because there is no stalking going on. But as long as they can get attention, they go for it. So the question comes down here, when it came down to a hoax, were both Sherri Papini and her husband involved in a hoax? Or was Sherri Papini alone involved in a hoax? Or was this not a hoax at all? Was this a true abduction? And this gets very interesting. So, okay, now I'm going to go back in time, because this is something actually I didn't even know at the time that is fascinating. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, Spring Daisy asked a question. How does it differ from a hypochondriac? The difference is a hypochondriac is somebody who actually feels like something is happening to them, and they're not seeking attention. they just truly are paranoid about feeling ill, that maybe they've got issues. That is different. It can sometimes it's hard for a doctor when somebody comes in to say, is this person a hypochondriac? Are they lying like a dog to me? Are they Munchausen syndrome? Or is there really something happening? I mean, it's a difficult spot to be in, and I don't know. Oh my God! Now somebody says the video has frozen 4 times. Is anybody else having any problems with the video again? Because I am so frustrated with StreamYard. I'm hoping that it's just sometimes it is local to you, but then again, sometimes it's actually on this end of it, and I really don't know why, because I am linked in. I am connected to the internet, physically connected, and it shouldn't be happening, but okay, everybody else is saying no problems. Sorry if you're having problems, and I'm hoping it's not for everybody, but sorry for you if it is. Really frustrating, but you can always go back later and watch it if it happens to be on your end. If it's on my end, we're all screwed. But okay, so now I'm going to go back to why this is such an interesting case, because of what happened before it. And I really wasn't aware of what happened before this case, and this makes it even more interesting. So let's go back to now. When did this all happen? Okay, Sherri and Keith Papini, this is this couple. Sherri was supposedly abducted on November 2nd of 2016 in Redding, California. But before that, hold on a second, sorry. Hold on a second. Just sometimes things just don't work well. So November 2nd, 2016 in Redding, California. However, back in March 22nd of 2015 in Vallejo, California, there was another abduction. And this one blew everybody away. And it was called the Gone Girl abduction. And the reason it was called Gone Girl was because the police didn't believe that this was a real abduction. And Gone Girl, the movie or the book, I'm not sure which one, came out just prior to that. It just came out. It was like, wow, this really creepy movie about a girl who's faking her own abduction because she's a psychopath. And by the way, I saw both the book and the movie, and I hated both of them. But I'm a profiler, and I thought it was completely wrong. But if you enjoyed it, bully for you. But the movie came out. And then we had this next case that came out, which really confounded the police. And let me show you who these people are. This is the other couple that came out before the Papino case. This is Denise let me move away. That's Denise Hoskins. And this is Aaron Quinn. Now, let me read you a really quick thing of what happened to them, because this truly is the most freaky thing I've ever heard. And it's important to understand that there's a thing called an anomaly. This would be it. If you want an anomaly, this absolutely wins the prize. So what happened to these two people? Here is a story. Quinn reported to Vallejo police, that's the boyfriend, that around 3 a.m. on March 22nd, he and Hoskins, that's the girl, were startled awake by a terrifying blast of light and knew someone was in their home. There were red laser beams pointing at them, as if sights from a gun, Rappaport said. I'm sorry, that's the lawyer, so ignore him. There were flashes, bright lights. They were disoriented, and then they were told to turn over. They were bound. She had to actually tie him up. She was removed to the closet. Goggles were placed on their heads and blacked out. They had like duct tape over them, so they couldn't see. Then he claimed that headphones were put over their ears and recorded instructions were played, telling him he would be drugged with about 1/4 of a bottle of diazepam and NyQuil. And if, quote, he didn't comply with any instructions, the other victim, which is his girlfriend, would be hurt, first by electric shock, then by cutting their face. The recording said that the suspect, get this one, the suspect was a member of a professional group there to collect financial debts. The man was told he needed to give $15,000 for his girlfriend's safe return, and he was also supposed to give it in pieces. So it was like $7,500 and then $7,500. And 15,000 for an abduction is like peanuts. I mean, who the hell abducts somebody for $15,000? That makes no sense. Quinn then told the police he was taken downstairs and left on the couch, his ankles bound with duct tape, and he fell asleep from the sedative. The intruders took off, driving away in Quinn's car, so they took his car, which made the police go, really? They didn't have their own car, they took his car. And they had Huskins drugged in the trunk. So she was in the trunk, he was on the couch. She was taken in hours and hours in the back of a car. So she was going someplace and, somewhere. Then he said, this guy said he finally woke up hours later and found a video camera trained on him with a red outline on the floor around him. Who does this? What kind of kidnapper does this? He finally called the police about 2 p.m. More than 10 hours had passed since his girlfriend was allegedly abducted. And he went to the police station. His actually called his brother, and it was an FBI guy. And he said, call the police immediately. So then he ended up going there. They took a blood test to determine the drugs in his system. He submitted to a polygraph. He told the police that whoever took Huskins left behind their cell phones, and he had already received a message demanding a ransom of 2 payments of $8,500, which actually is $17,000 and not $15,000. Okay, go figure. So anyway, meanwhile, they get an email, and there's an email that comes in, and the audio file has the voice of a woman on it. And she says, "My name is Denise Huskins. I am kidnapped, otherwise fine." Then 2 days later, after Huskins had been allegedly kidnapped, she shows up unharmed 400 miles away in Huntington Beach, California, near her mother's home. Someplace else it says it's her dad's home, but it's a little confusing. Spotting a gardener, she asked for a cell phone. She called her father to let her know she was safe and alive. And then she told the police a similar story. Supposedly that she said she had been put in a trunk. She had been taken away. She was bound with zip ties, and a bike chain. Remember the zip ties and a bike chain. This is important. Zip ties and a bike chain. And then she was taken someplace. She was given food, water, was allowed to shower and brush her teeth. She said she wasn't sexually assaulted, but later on, supposedly she was having sex with a dude. And it was like, she wouldn't say it was rape, but he was forcing her into it, supposedly. It's very confusing. And I suppose it happened 2 times. The inconsistencies in her story, her almost nonchalant demeanor, and the bizarre details of the case led the Vallejo police to believe the case could be a hoax. No kidding. And on top of that, they said they'd fly her back to Vallejo, and she refused, and then she lawyered up. So it's like, what? And the police got pretty unhappy about this whole thing. And then, and there's a whole bunch of stuff where the police went public and said, this is a hoax. I mean, they've wasted all our resources. This is the most ridiculous story I've ever heard. That frogman. The dudes are person dressed like a frogman, does all this for $15,000, $17,000. And she gets let off 400 miles away at her daddy's house or her mommy's house or whatever it is. Really, who would drive her 400 miles so she could hang out there? Why not bring her back to the house she came? None of it makes sense. And the police were not wrong in thinking that, because this is the strangest thing I have ever heard. I would think this story sucks. It sounds like a hoax to me. Then, get this, less than 24 hours after the Vallejo police publicly discredited the kidnapping, the San Francisco Chronicle's Henry Lee, that's not the medical examiner we hear about. This is a guy who works for the San Francisco Chronicle, received an email from an anonymous source claiming to speak for a group that has kidnapped Huskins. Ms. Huskins was definitely kidnapped. Reading the email said, "We did it. We will provide incontrovertible proof of that, and the Chronicle will break it." The email also details the group's alleged car theft activities, boasted that they fancied themselves as a sort of Ocean 11's gentlemen criminals. Oh, how lovely. But said the operation went terribly wrong, and they decided to release her. They included several photos of evidence, including the fake gun they used and the room they claimed Hoskins was held in. The email also claimed the alleged kidnappers were outraged that the Vallejo police at the Vallejo police and demanded they apologize. gets weirder and weirder. And then here's what happens. In June, a guy named Matthew Muller, was arrested in connection. And let me show you this dude. This is Matthew Muller. He exists. He's a real person. He was once in the Marines, and then he became a lawyer. He was arrested. And the reason he was arrested was because there was this break-in, and the person who was attacking the victims in this home invasion dropped his phone because, sometimes criminals are stupid as shit. And he dropped his phone, and the phone led back to this guy, Matthew Muller. And they went, his mother pointed out where he lived and said, hey, check that cabin out. And then they went there and they found, get this, night vision goggles, duct tape, collection of drones in his car, storage unit. They also found blonde hair and everything that was said to be true about the case. And they linked him to the guy who actually did indeed attack these people, this couple. And this couple ended up getting $2.5 million because of what the police did, which I'm not going to get into how the police conducted their investigation. All I'm going to say is that the police had every reason to think this was a hoax because it was so outrageous. And because it seemed like the boyfriend was also involved in the hoax, so it wasn't a Munchausen syndrome thing. It seemed like they were in it together. It was absolutely outrageous. I'm not saying their techniques were proper. I don't think they handled the crime scene particularly well, but I think they thought it was so ridiculous that they just didn't believe it from the get-go, and they were trying to force him into a confession very quickly. So they got $2.5 million off of it. And I have to say, I hadn't actually heard about this case prior to the Papini case, but if I'd heard about this case, I'd go, that's a hoax, And so as a profiler, I would have been wrong, because really, who conducts a home invasion and a kidnapping the way it was done? Who asked for $15,000 or $17,000 for all that damn work? Who does all the putting up cameras, and who does that? I mean, well, apparently this Matthew Muller guy does that because he was a weirdo. He was an absolute freaking weirdo who had this fantasy, and he liked to conduct this fantasy. Maybe when he left the military and he's either psychopathic or psychotic or both, he wants to do these weird ass things, So the problem is, once in a while you get a completely bizarre case and it throws everybody off, and it can't really blame anybody in particular for thinking that this was a hoax. I say you can maybe say the police should have handled it in a different way. Maybe they should have been more thorough, but they probably absolutely thought it was a hoax, and they were pissed off because maybe they thought they were being misled. They were wasting a ton of time and money, and they were just angry. And these folks ended up with $2.5 million, and she's got a new book out, and they had a cute baby, and they've got to live with whatever happened. And it was really, really bizarre. But now here's what gets really interesting. So this happened. Let me check my numbers again. My dates. This happened in March 22nd of 2015. So we had the Gone Girl thing come out, very popular. And then right at March 22nd, 2015, this happens. Then the next year, we have the Papini case. Now, it is possible that if the Papini case, let's go back to our Papini folks. Okay, here they are. Very, very cute couple, very cute kids. So question is, was she abducted, or on the heels of the Gone Girl thing and on the heels of this other Gone Girl case, which turned out to be a true abduction, did Sherri Papini say, wow, this would be a superb way to get attention? Because one of the things that people do who want to get attention and are building a story, they go to things they know. They build a story on something that they are familiar with. It could be a movie. It could be the news. But it's something they're familiar with. Most people aren't really great fiction writers. They don't start from like complete zero and say, let me come up with a completely unique story that no one has ever heard about. That's not the way most people think. So you get these ideas and then you start building on them. So when this occurred, the question was, did Sherri Papini build an abduction story based on what had already happened with that particular case? Because it was known to her by that time, because the guy, Matthew Muller, was arrested in June of 2015. And this case was November of 2016. So the case they proved it was a real case. And now, if you commit the same kind of, if you put together the same kind of abduction, maybe the police will believe you, because after all, the Gone Girl case turned out to be a true abduction. Am I saying this is what happened? No, I'm not. I'm saying it makes it very interesting. So now let's go to some things about the Papini case, because that's why you're all here. But I want to just set up the whole possibilities prior to that. So now we have a case where Sherri Papini has supposedly gone out jogging and has gone missing. Now let me play you the 911 call. Here's my 911. Oh, okay. 911 call after she went missing. And this is from Keith Papini.
911, what is your emergency? CHP transfer. Keith is on the line. Hello, can I help you?
Hello? Yeah, so I just got home from work, and my wife wasn't there, which is unusual, and my kids should have been there by now from, daycare. So I was like, oh, maybe she went on a walk. I couldn't find her, so I called the daycare to see what time she picked up the kids. The kids were never picked up, so I got freaked out, so I hit, the Find My iPhone app thing, and it said that it showed her phone, at our end of our driveway. We don't have really good service.
Okay.
Not the end of our driveway, but the end of our street. So I just drove down there, and I saw her phone with her headphones because she started running again. And I found her phone, and it's got, hair ripped out of it, in the headphones. So I'm, totally freaking out, thinking, somebody, grabbed her.
Okay, what's your address?
Reading.
Okay, what's your last name?
Yes. Papini, Papini.
And your first name?
Keith.
Keith?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I've always talked a lot about how 911 calls have a lot of information in them because they're real. The emotions are right there. Something is happening right now. And there are red flags that go up during this thing for me. One is that he does never say he called his wife's phone. Now, there's a huge argument on the internet. And it's always hard to get the exact truth because with the internet, it's hard to do that. If I were working the police investigation, I would know exactly what the interview said. Did he call his wife? He says tried to find her where her phone was, but he never told him he called his wife. And I just thought, that is bizarre because the first thing you do when you're where the hell are you? Honey, and you call, no, she's not answering. Try again. She's not answering. Jesus Christ, where the hell is she? You try again. She's not answering. Then you might go find her phone. I don't have an objection to him finding her phone. I have that on my phone. I mean, it's useful. But why doesn't he ever try to call her first? That just, it seems weird to me. Now, could he have accidentally left it out of the 911 call? He could have, but it's just odd. So that was a red flag. He also tells it he says, and then when I found her headphones, I'm like, and I got freaked out, he's telling it like it's already so past tense. He's raising his voice every time, and then I went home and that's do you see, agree with me? See, I'm trying to be honest. It's one of those weird, usually women do that, not men. It's kind of a freaky thing for a man to do. I know a lot of women who do that and they want you to agree with them. And then let me tell you what happened. And it's kind of a way to get people to think that you're being really honest and you're not forceful. You see what I'm saying? The whole 911 call is weird to me. And so the question what a lot of people had was he in on this? If it was a hoax. And my theory is maybe not. Maybe he has suspicions that maybe he's had experiences where he doesn't know where she is, but he also has some suspicions that she does things. And so he wants to find her because he's got kids who need their mother back. But on the other hand, he's a little unsure, I'm a little unsure of maybe what happened. So it's an interesting phone call. But let's look at some of the issues of the case, which are just entirely fascinating to me. And this is absolutely one of them. And I put this in my thumbnail when I started out. This. All right. So her claim is that 2 Hispanic women, 2 Latinas, kidnapped her at gunpoint. And I'm like, so you're just jogging along and a van pulls over and 2 women jump out with bandanas on their faces. How interesting is that? This is Halloween. And when did this happen? Oh, November. So we're talking about November 2nd, Halloween, October 31st, November 2nd. Okay, let me count. 2 days later? 2 days later. So you go to a party, you wear bandanas, you're banditos or banditas. She's got a bandana too. It's just that in this picture, she wants her face to be seen. But he's wearing his fully, and amazingly enough, 2 days later, 2 women come along with the same bandanas and kidnap them. They're banditos or banditas. I'm not sure. My Spanish is shitty. So are they banditas? Okay. Maybe these days they're banditexes. I can't keep up with the rules these days. But anyway, with Spanish, las banditas. Okay. So las banditas arrive with a van, for some reason, decide to kidnap this woman off the street. Okay. And amazingly enough, they look just like what happened 2 days ago on Halloween. And remember what I said? The problem is you use things to create a story. So we've got the Gone Girl story. We've got the Gone Girl case. Now we've got this. Okay. So now let's take a look at the next thing about kidnapping Sherri Papini. She's 34. I think she was 34. 34 years old. I think I'm right about that. 34 years old. She's an attractive woman. I don't think she's unattractive. She's good looking enough. She's small. She's like 100 pounds. She's just a thin girl. Which is perfect for serial killers. If a serial killer had grabbed her, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they prefer 19-year-olds or 18-year-olds or 16-year-olds. But, a good looking 34-year-old, who's skinny and small. Serial killer. Okay. So now you got these Hispanic ladies decide they're going to kidnap a white jogger off the side of the road. For what? So we get into this whole idea of sex trafficking. Really? First of all, here's the rules of sex trafficking. First of all, 34-year-old women, not popular in sex trafficking. Not. Because, as attractive as she may be, she's still 34. That's a reality. Dudes don't want 34-year-olds. They want 14-year-olds. They want 16-year-olds. They want maybe 18-year-olds who look like 14-year-olds. They don't want 34-year-olds. They don't want a mother who's had 2 babies. They don't want that. So you don't kidnap older ladies. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Second, this is what it drives me crazy, because in America, there's so many people now going on about sex trafficking where people believe that women and children are being kidnapped off the streets. I mean, they're all being put into sex trafficking. No, they're not. If they're kidnapped off the streets in America, they're being kidnapped by serial killers. They're going to be dead within a few hours. Here's the thing about sex trafficking. There's 2 things. You don't want to work that hard at it. And secondly, you don't want a police investigation. There are so many people you can get, so many women you can get. They use drugs. They run away from home. It's easy. You can get lots of cute blonde women. Natalie Holloway, for example, wasn't kidnapped into sex trade. There's a lot of blonde girls who walk in the sex trade. When I was 19. I remember I was out in California. I was doing profiling. Profiling work. No, I was doing modeling work, very poorly, by the way, and didn't get very far. I should show you the picture. But anyway, I was cute. I was a really attractive looking 19-year-old. I saw an ad, and the ad was, "Come to Japan, be a hostess." And you know, a lot of girls answered that ad. They went straight off to Japan and they became prostitutes. You know, suckers. They're suckers. So the girls who go out to Hollywood, they're 18 years old. They can't get work in the movies. There's so many pretty girls in Hollywood. It's not like being in like some podunk place where you're like the queen of whatever, homecoming queen. Like when you get to Hollywood, it's like, damn, everybody looks cute. You're just one of them. And you've got no skills, you've got no experience. So either you sleep with everybody and try to make your way up the ladder, or you get into prostitution, which is a lot of girls do that. And not me. I left Hollywood, didn't get into prostitution in Hollywood. But those girls are available. You don't have to work very hard. You can say to the girls, "Hey, come on over here. Hey, you know, you can make some money," and they'll go right into prostitution. You don't need to kidnap women off the street and start a massive police investigation when right down the street you got an 18-year-old blonde girl who will go willingly. That's not the way it works. As far as even children, you know how many drug addict women will sell their child? Oh, here, take this kid. You know, a lot of it is with illegal immigration. There's, for example, there's a lot of massage parlors run by people from certain parts of Asia. And people always give them a break, but hey, anybody who runs one of those massage parlors is nothing but a madam and a pimp, and she brings in women and she exploits them and she makes a lot of money. So don't give them any kind of a break. That they're pimps, but they're illegal immigrants, so you can bring them in, or you give them you go to, like, for example, in China, certain places they'll say to the women, we'll get you green card here in the US. And so the women come over and then they snatch their passports up and force them into prostitution. It's horrible. But they don't have to kidnap them off the streets. They don't have to kidnap a 34-year-old woman off the street. Not happening. So the whole kidnapping for the sex trade is ridiculous. So that's not what happened. So then why are two Hispanic women kidnapping a white woman off the street? For sex, for what reason? Well, you could say, okay, we're going to go for a ransom, but no ransom was ever asked for. It could be that the two of them were involved in the drug trade with the Mexican cartels and they pissed somebody off. Okay, but there was never any proof of that. So now you have these two ladies, for some unknown reason, kidnap Sherri Papini off the street, and they take her away. And what's interesting is she never gets raped, which is useful if you want to go back to your husband and two children. You never get raped because they're two women, apparently. And Sherri Papini also remembers nothing much of this whole time she's held captive. And one of the weird things she says is sometimes they had their face covered and sometimes they didn't have their face covered. So sometimes they had your face covered and sometimes they had their face covered, but sometimes they didn't have their face covered. They're that sloppy, and yet you remember nothing of their faces except for up here, which, you have no memory of what goes on. Now, I admit you can have some psychological damage from being held in captivity, but a good portion of people held in captivity try their best to remember every detail because they want to identify these people. Oh, and speaking of that, let me read you which I thought was another really interesting thing. Okay, where is it? Okay. Keith Papini made a full statement. This is called a full statement to Good Morning America. Listen to what he has to say. The first thing I would like to address is the overwhelming amount of gratitude our family has for the thousands of people, blah, blah, blah. Hold on a second. I've got an advertisement that just came out. Okay. Then he goes on to thank everybody in creation, like literally everybody in creation. Secondly, we live in a nation of free speech accompanied with an era of technology. Era of technology. Era. Did I say that? That provides immediate gratification. This is a double-edged sword. I'm grateful for the system as it is what spread my wife's face quickly throughout the world, gaining the attention of thousands. The unfortunate side is that some people have been sitting in angering, expectant positions waiting for the gory details. I'll agree with them on that. Rumors, assumptions, lies, and hate have been both exhausting and disgusting. I'll agree with them on that. Blah, blah, blah. They say I understand people want the story, pictures, proof that this was not some sort of hoax planned to gain money or some fabricated race war. And I'm not going to address all the preposterous lies. I'm okay with that. Blah, blah, blah. Instead, I may give you a glimpse of the mixture of horror and elation. That was my experience of reuniting with the love of my life and the mother of our children. Nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see upon arrival at the hospital, nor the details of the true hell I was about to hear. The officers warned me to brace myself. My first sight was my wife in a hospital bed, her face covered in bruises, ranging from yellow to black because of repeated beatings, the bridge of her nose broken. Her now emaciated body of 87 pounds was covered in multicolored bruises, severe burns, red rashes, and chain markings. Her signature long brown hair had been chopped off. She had been branded, and I could feel the scabs under my fingers. She was thrown from a vehicle with a chain around her waist, attached to her wrist, and a bag over her head, the same bag she used to flag someone down once she was able to free one of her hands. Sherri was taken from us for 22 days and suffered incredibly through both intense physical agony and severe mental torture. My reaction was one of extreme happiness and overwhelming nausea as my eyes and hands scanned her body. I was filled with so much relief and revulsion at once. My Sherri suffered tremendously, and all the visions swirling in your heads of her appearance, I assure you, are not as graphic and as gruesome as reality. We're a very private family. We're a very private family who, not whom, do not use social media outlets prior to this grotesque tragedy. Tragedy. Keep that in mind. My love for my wife took precedence, and it was clear we had to be exposed in ways we never have been comfortable with. Please have a heart, understand why I've asked for privacy. The long road of healing. Ultimately, it's Sherri's will to survive that brought her home. Thank you. Okay. I have so many issues with this statement. Let me see if I can go through all of them. First of all, he called this a tragedy. A tragedy? No, it's a crime. A tragedy is not a crime. A crime is a crime. A crime is something that happens to you that is against the law. That is somebody breaking the law to do something atrocious to you. It's not a tragedy. A tragedy is when you have a horrible car crash. A tragedy is when someone loses their mind and shoots their family. Well, even that might be a crime. But, a tragedy is something that happens that you're not necessarily blaming a specific person for. It's just a horrible thing that happened. This is a crime, dude. And did you see any place in this entire letter that said, I'm appalled that 2 women would kidnap my wife and torture her. I want these criminals caught. He doesn't even go there. He doesn't mention one word about who did this to his wife. He's only angry about the public suspecting his wife of a hoax. And he goes on and on about how, A, she's a wonderful person, and B, she suffered a tremendous amount of injuries. She suffered so many injuries, they released her from the hospital, and she didn't even spend an overnight. Now, I've worked in hospitals for many, many years, over a decade. I'm going to guarantee you, if she came in with severe injuries and massive emaciation, they would have kept her at least 24 hours for observation, if nothing else, overnight for observation. We're going to give you some fluids. We're going to watch you to make sure there's nothing else wrong. I mean, my God, you've been kidnapped and beaten and abused and you're emaciated. We're going to watch you. Oh, she goes home. Really? She's got massive injuries and she just goes home right away. I mean, a couple hours in the emergency room, and that doesn't make sense to me. So we've got a guy who doesn't even care about the abductors and the kidnappers. He has no anger toward them. He's more concerned. He wants to promote that his wife was severely injured. Here's another interesting thing. He talks about her, let me point this out, her signature long hair. He keeps on calling it a signature long hair. I don't know, but that's weird. I'm sorry, just because you have long hair, you have long hair. It's not signature. You just have long hair. You like long hair. But apparently, they talk about over and over. He says, it was chopped off. It was chopped off. And I'm going to guarantee you, every one of you had the image of chopped off, meaning this, like just chopped off to insult, like she had nothing left hardly of her hair. It was like a really bad haircut up here. Oh, no. Do you know what it really was? It was chopped off at the shoulders. Oh, I'm sorry, but if you don't really want to have something bad happen to you, that something really that is really, really upsetting to you, you don't want your hair chopped off like this. Chopping off like this means you can grow it back pretty quickly, but you still look pretty good. So it actually was chopped off here. So all this outrage about how her hair was chopped off, to me is really questionable, because I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense. First of all, I don't have any reason why sex traffickers or whatever they were doing to have any reason to chop her hair off to begin with. I mean, because she's got cool long hair. Hell, sell that as a point. Hey, you want to go with a hot 34-year-old with really cool hair you can feel? Why would you chop it off? But of course, they didn't chop it off this way to insult her and humiliate her. No, they left it nicely at her shoulders. We didn't learn about that for a long time because we kept being told how horrifying this was. Also, she was supposedly branded, and this was pushed over and over again. Branded. Well, supposedly on her right shoulder, she had this brand here. And eventually it was said by the police that it was something they couldn't even read. So they're going to brand you with something, but nobody knows what the hell it is. Is that really something somebody's going to do? It makes no sense again. This location, again, is not such a bad location. And if you're really going to screw somebody over, brand them on the damn face, brand them on the neck, brand them someplace where at least people see the damn thing. But branding on over here, which you can't even read it. What? I mean, it again, makes no sense. Now, what's interesting about this whole story is, okay, so we got somebody who supposedly was out jogging, and supposedly for no reason that makes any sense, she was kidnapped by 2 Hispanic women who then take her someplace. And by the way, they did find some DNA from a woman and a man, which she says there was no man. There's a whole bunch of stuff about that. And then she's released. She's supposedly thrown out of a vehicle, and she's running around in the dark with a chain and these zip ties, which is exactly what happened with the Gone Girl case, isn't it? The chain and the zip ties. Just saying. It's interesting that it's very similar. And then she shows up, and they've never since ever found anybody who committed this crime. They got nothing. They also, the police, interesting enough, never told the community, be wary, there's somebody out there kidnapping women, because, I mean, you really want to let people know that there's somebody dangerous out in the community because you want to protect the community. But they didn't seem to issue anything. Now, I'm not saying the police couldn't be wrong as they were in the Gone Girl case. This could be another outrageously strange case. But I'm going to tell you, there's some things in this case which are problematic. And let me tell you, let's go back to Munchausen syndrome before I finish up here. And I'm going to, let me see if I can, new details. Okay, I'm looking for my little spot here. Okay, here is when I talk about Munchausen syndrome means you love attention. You want to get attention one way or the other. And a lot of times when people want to be the perfect parent, have the perfect kids, be the perfect wife, they want the attention by being these things. And they like to play a drama. And oftentimes the husband, I'm going to say the word that I use with husbands of Munchausen syndrome people, I call them dolts. Why do I call them that? Because they're well-meaning people who, as long as their needs are met, turn a blind eye. They're easily persuaded. They're easily manipulated. And they're like, and he goes on about how perfect she is as a mother, how perfect she is as love of his life. Damn. I wish I had a dude like that. But, I'm not saying he doesn't believe these things, but I'm just wondering why he believes these things. Now let's take a look at two things that happened in the past, which I think are fascinating. And these are from law enforcement. So I'm not just repeating something coming off the internet or somebody's opinion about Sherri Papini, because a lot of this stuff is junk. On October 1st, 2000, wait a minute, when this is 16 years prior. Reports show the Shasta County Sheriff's Office responded to a call from Sheila, I can't pronounce her name, Graff, who said her sister, Sherri, tried to break into her home. An hour later, a call saying Papini was vandalizing her parents' home. Now, I would like to ask you out there in the world, how many of you have had people, one of your relatives, call to say you're vandalizing their home? I've never had that happen. Have you? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so she went into a rage and started doing some stuff. I don't know why, but okay, she did. But here's the one that really gets me. In 2003, when Papini was 21, her mother called the sheriff's office asking her advice about her daughter, saying she was hurting herself and blaming it on her parents. That is what really, really, really stands out to me. As I've said, with Munchausen syndrome, women sometimes hurt themselves and sometimes physically hurt themselves and then claim somebody else. They will actually like hit themselves in the face or something and say, he hit me. Some people have stabbed themselves and said, he stabbed me. So in order to get attention and then blame other people, it's amazing the stories they come up with. Now, what mother would call the sheriff's office to ask for help? My daughter is doing this weird crap. My daughter is hurting herself, and then she's trying to say we did it to her. Now, either her parents were truly abusive, or Sherri Papini has Munchausen syndrome. And so she's a malignant narcissist who likes to get attention and blame other people for what happens. Now, she also had supposedly written somewhere, and this is verified to some great extent, that she had some fight with some Hispanic women, and she had broken the nose of a Hispanic woman. Hispanic women. Here we go. So we have this whole scenarios leading up to this. The bandanas, the Hispanic women, the fights with Hispanic women, the breaking the noses, the parents saying she hurts herself and blames others. And then the Gone Girl thing and the Gone Girl case thing. And suddenly Hispanic women pop out with bandanas and bring her someplace and abuse her and also release her. And she's far away, just like the Gone Girl case. And she is released with the same thing as the Gone Girl case. She's got I forget these things again, the ties, the zip ties and the chain, just like that. And she's got injuries, but not injuries that are permanent, not injuries that will ruin her face, not anything that's really disastrous. She doesn't even stay overnight in the hospital. And now she's basically gone to seclusion. She spends time with her family, blah, blah, blah. And nothing has ever come of this case. I'm going to say, so looking at the case, I would say the Gone Girl case I would have probably said, like the police in the beginning, it looks sure as hell looks like a hoax. And I would have had egg on my face and I would have gone, this would have been one of the times all my haters could have said, see, Pat Brown was wrong. She, it was an abduction and she was completely wrong. Well, it would have been, but it wouldn't be for a bad reason. It would be because it was such an anomaly that you would never, ever, ever expect that to be true. However, with this particular, but here's what's interesting. With the Gone Girl case, we don't have a history of anybody acting in a bizarre way. We don't. But in this particular case, the Papini case, we do have a history of apparently attention seeking by Sherri Papini. So I am going to say, if I were going to weigh things out, yes, this case looks more like a hoax and a Munchausen syndrome attempt for attention than did the Gone Girl case. That's where I stand on this. And, I understand the feelings of that, people have opinions and it's hurtful to the family and all that stuff. But, when you're in the public eye to this extent with it kind of sucks, but it is the way it is. For the Gone Girl case, you know, it was so weird. I think you just at some point have to accept that it's like getting hit with a hurricane. You know, you didn't deserve it, but it happened, and you can't blame a whole lot of people for something that's so bizarre that they didn't do they weren't trying to be terrible people. They just thought for sure it had to be fake. And you got $2.5 million on. I'm not blaming you for it. Okay, you got it. You know, you had a shitty time. You got caught up in like the weirdest thing ever, and you end up with $2.5 million. So I'm going to say it's good all around. With the Papini case, there's no proof any direction at this point, but it's just I have a real hard time going with abduction on this. So let me look at now some of your anybody else's thoughts now. So I want to point out some of these issues about Lisa says, I think she has borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is a little bit different from malignant narcissism. Although let me talk about wait a minute, I just lost your hold on a second. I'm gonna fly back here too. Okay, here. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and most of them don't particularly like my opinions. But I believe in a thing called the narcissism continuum. We're healthy over here, and we're completely screwed with psychopathy over here. In between, there's narcissism. And then what happens is, you know, the psychological associations, they like to put a lot of labels on shit, you know, tons and tons of labels. And a lot of the labels just really don't have a great deal of meaning. And so it's useful for them because it gives you something to do. But a lot of times it's what we really don't quite know. And we're just going to say you're somewhere in here. So narcissism, the problem is you need a lot of attention. You need things to be about you. And how far does that go? And in what way does it go? I think a lot of the labels are more about how you act it out. Like Munchausen syndrome is still narcissism. It's just how you're acting it out. In Munchausen syndrome, you like to pretend something happened to you. That's how you get attention. Munchausen syndrome by proxy, you have things happen to other people that you get attention from. Other narcissists get attention from, you know, all kinds of other things that they do. And borderline personality disorders, my theory on that is that it's a type of a narcissistic personality who never can get enough fulfillment from anybody. So they're always like at the deep hole you can't fill up and you can't fill up. So they're always feeling like the glass is half empty. And no matter what you do, the glass is still half empty. So if one is married to a borderline personality disorder, the problem is you cook dinner and the person says, well, it's okay, but you didn't cook the food I liked. So the next time one cooks the food they like, and they go, well, it's nice that you cook the food I like, but it's not very well prepared. And then you cook the food perfectly, and they say, yes, but I don't get this every night. You can't win because the glass is always half empty. And it's because they can never get fulfilled. But that's still narcissism. But there's just different ways that narcissism plays out. And I often think that it's really just most of the descriptions out there are how narcissism is the methodology that narcissists use to get over on everybody else, to get the attention, to get the fulfillment, to get the whatever they need, their needs filled. That's how they do it. Not so much that they're different. It's just how they do it. Because we all have ways that we get, fulfillment. Let's say, for example, we're hungry. One person says, well, I just want myself a pizza. And the other person says, well, I want Chinese food. And the other person says, I want Indian food. And the other person says, well, I want all raw foods. Or we're all still hungry. We just have different ways of fulfilling it. This narcissism is the same way. And I think sometimes they overdo things a little bit much in that, as far as their labeling goes. Let me see whatever you got here. Yeah, Doreen says, I agree. Very interesting thoughts. Munchausen wasn't something I considered, but it really fits. Again, Munchausen Munchausen syndrome is simply a way a narcissist gets attention. And it is much more prevalent than we think it is. And stalking is the number one way that the claim is, and I get, you wouldn't believe how many of those the people call me about that they're stalked. And I'm always laughing because I'm like, well, no, nobody stalks me, and nobody stalked me when I was 40 either. And I was a TV person. I mean, I take that back. I was stalked, but I was stalked as a TV celebrity, not as a person driving to work every day. There's a difference between that. TV celebrities do get stalked, or we get stalked a lot. But an average person does not usually get stalked. I mean, especially for 10 years on end. They're like, oh, and this dude has been stalking me for 10 years. I'm like, really? And he calls me on the phone. Do you have the recordings? No. But he comes to my house. Do you have videotape? No. It's that kind of thing. It's just, again, tension getting. And then they call me up and they say, can you go to the police and help me out? And I'm like, do you have any evidence? And the answer is always no. So it's very interesting. So let me see what else you have to say here. Histrionic. I don't know. I've always hated the phrase histrionically, so only because that was used so far back against women. It's like, oh, women, they're so hysterical. Actually, narcissists aren't hysterical. They're conniving. They're manipulative. They're not hysterical. And I think we should recognize that, because they can be very their manipulations can be very disastrous for many people. It's again almost a version of psychopathy, and it is on purpose that they do this, and they know what they're doing. So don't believe that they don't know what they're doing. And that's what the histrionic thing used to come in. It's like, oh, they just lost their minds and they just don't know what they're doing. No, they know what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. So asking here about for any legal action. No, there can be no legal action because they haven't proven anything one way or the other. It's just sitting there, and probably the police still believe that it's a hoax. But oh, wait a minute. Here's a good question. If she needed a lot of attention, what did she do with herself all the time she was missing? That part doesn't fit. Well, this is a good question, and a reasonable one. First of all, think about mass murderers. Mass murderers are really interesting. People sometimes say to me, well, if he wanted attention and at the end of the day he's dead, how is it getting attention? He's dead. He can't even know what's going on. You don't understand. The mind is about fantasy. So that mass murderer says to himself, when I go in and shoot everybody, I'm going to have the moment of my life when I see everybody drop dead right there and then. Awesome. And then I know I'm going to get shot down, but I know the next day in the papers, my name is going to be there. My face is going to be there because the media is stupid and won't shut the hell up about me. And then they're going to talk about me for days on end. I'm going to become part of history. I'm going to become famous. And if you think, oh no, that would make no difference if you're dead. Why do people want their names on buildings? Why do people put people's names on park benches in memoriams? Why do people want to say, I want to leave a legacy? Because in their minds, before they croak, they want to know that they're going to go on and be famous or be infamous or whatever they're going to be. So believe me, fantasy is grand. And so She Papini, I don't know. Again, I don't know if she was kidnapped or she wasn't. But let's assume she wasn't kidnapped. Let's just make up a scenario of that. So she has this plan. She's going to go off with some dude or some people, and she's doing whatever she's doing. Meanwhile, while she's doing it, she's getting the thrill out of whatever she's doing, and she's also getting the thrill out of knowing everybody is looking for her. Every minute of the day, somebody's looking for me. Isn't that cool? My husband is beside himself. He can't find me. He wants me back. Work, that's exciting shit. It's exciting. So you have to understand that a lot of stuff is in the mind, and not necessarily, and the mind is an important place for people, because especially in a narcissist mind, because remember, narcissists don't have a lot of concern about other people. Like psychopaths definitely don't care about anybody else. So the only person that matters is themselves. So it's what they think and what they enjoy and what they're getting off on. That's what matters. Whether it's true or it's not true, doesn't matter. This one's Charles says, I think they're scammers. Well, they weren't. In the beginning, I wondered whether the husband could be in on it, but they didn't ask for money. Well, actually, there were some money issues, but I don't know. I almost don't think he was in on it. I mean, I honestly think that if this was a hoax, I think it was a hoax by Sherri Papini, that he probably had an awareness that she's done weird stuff before, and he questioned whether she was really abducted, but he still wanted her back. As I said, the word dolt, I've used that with a lot of guys. It's amazing how many guys have had their wives kill off a number of their children, and then they always go, well, she was a good mother, she was a really good wife, but you killed your children. It's because what they do, if they are that kind of person, is they might play the game so that you are happy, because they need you to be their front man, essentially, that you're their face of society. It's the proof that you're great, that you're wonderful, that you wouldn't do anything questionable because you love me to death and you think I'm a great mother and you think I'm a great wife, and therefore nothing I do can be questioned because you think I'm wonderful. So it's a methodology of was Sherri diagnosed? No, I mean I don't see, there's no evidence that she's ever been a psychiatrist or anybody's ever diagnosed her. So no, there's nothing there about her. Just some of the past behaviors which are concerning. Which is all I'm trying to point out here is, why do police do what they do? Why do investigators do what they do? Why do they analyze the way they do? My point in all of my videos has never been to say, this is absolutely true. This is absolutely true. It's to point out how investigations work. So when you're a police officer and you've got this case in front of you and you're like, nobody's going to take her for sex trafficking. Why would two women grab her off the street? Why would she say they have bandanas sometimes? Why would they, and they got question after question after question, which doesn't work for them. Now, it could be the Gone Girl case, which is just like, who would think? Wow, boy, we're all wrong on that one, but it's so bizarre. There's no way we could have been right. In this case, I'm still thinking probably they think there's something amiss with the story. And so there they are, and they can't, unless they've got proof otherwise. Sherri has no information whatsoever to give them. They got nothing. Now, maybe there'll be some freaky thing that'll happen one day that'll prove everybody wrong and that, my God, she was really abducted, but I'm not really seeing that that's happening at this point in time. And it's been quite a while for her. I'm going to avoid reading anything that I hear that I don't know if is absolutely true. And I know there's a lot of interesting stories out there, but you got to be really careful. If it doesn't come from the police, I don't know. I don't go there because I don't know. So many stories on the internet. You got to understand, so many stories on the internet are just pack of lies from somebody's perspective, or somebody made it up. Sometimes it's complete garbage, but somebody makes it sound really reasonable. So then you say, well, see, she did this before, she did that before. I'm not going there. The only thing I want 2 police reports, because they're police reports. So they're not from nowhere. They're from police reports. So I'm going with evidence, and I'm going with stuff that I at least can have some reason to believe is substantial and true. And I won't go with all kinds of stuff that I have no clue. So, that's an interesting point. Lisa said, I like this one. The event probably satiated herself for years. Interesting enough, this is the thing with serial killers too. People ask me, well, how can they stop serial killing? I'm like, it's like being in the war. How many guys do you know who go down to, they hang out with the vets, and they sit there. They're like been in the Vietnam War. They've been in World War II, and they sit around and talk about their experiences, because those experiences are so incredibly strong. They'll last forever. Why do people go back to their high school reunions? Apparently because they have a good time in high school. I never went to one because my high school years sucked. I hated high school. I left a year early. I graduated, but I hated it. I don't go to any high school reunions, and they have no memories for me. I think I read a poem called High School Reunion. High school reunion, I don't care. Hardly remember being there. Had no yearbook pages. Speech. Well, I forgot all. Oh, damn, I can't remember it. But anyway, I used to know that one by heart. But anyway, I wrote a poem because I didn't have anything going for me in high school. So, but there are people who go back as if it's the most amazing time of their life. I'm not grudging them that. That's cool. If you had 4 years in high school, which were fantastic, and you got to be a cheerleader and a football guy, and you got to go to the prom with your boyfriend, and it was absolutely fantastic. Those memories are so strong in your mind. You can talk about that forever. Serial killers are the same way. They will, if they have to stop serial killing because they're afraid the police are going to catch them, they're in a wheelchair, or they're in prison, whatever, they will live in their memories like vets do, like high school. If that's the way they live. So you can go a long time on certain memories, especially when you can't take a chance again. Now having said that, narcissists don't usually stop their basic narcissistic ritual. So they might have other ways of doing it. We're just not seeing it. So we just don't know. We just absolutely do not know. Let's see what else you have to say here. Well, it reads like a movie, Jennifer, but not as much as that Gone Girl case. That was absolutely the most bizarre thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, completely whacked out on that. Emily says, I've never considered Sherri acting alone without pre-planning with her husband. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people in the beginning thought it was a hoax that the two of them planned, but I don't know. I really don't think so. I don't see that in him. I see that he doesn't quite know what to do with the situation. And he wants his wife back because he's enamored by her. I may be wrong, but, so this is an interesting point. He was so delusional, maybe. Well, when you marry and this is your hubby and you have children, this is the mother of your children, you want to believe in them. I mean, it's the same thing. Why do women stay with a man who has been cheating on them for 20 years? Because they want to believe in them, because they don't want to destroy their family. They may have had the red flags all over the place, but they don't want to give up what they have. And they just don't want to have their hearts broken. And so if you can just not allow it to happen. And that's why a lot of people do end up in abusive relationships and other things that are terrible, because there's enough of a connection where you think there's something there. You think there's something real. And, especially especially if somebody's really good at manipulating you, you feel it's real. And so if he's not involved and she was, I don't blame him. I think he's just probably been he's just been a victim of that, and he doesn't really know. Let me see what else we have here. Oh, I think that the Gone Girl book and movie did some harm. Well, it didn't do harm to the author and the producers, because they made a shitload of money. It really annoyed me because it was incorrect. And I should probably do a show on Gone Girl someday, because her character is completely incorrect psychologically. And I can definitely support that, which is why it pissed me off so much. As a matter of fact, I read the book and I hated it. And then I went to the theater and I ended up staying through the whole movie. And the only reason I did was because I was at the end of the row and I couldn't get out. I'm like, let me out. But I didn't want to disturb people. So I sat there and I was like seething at but again, I'm looking at it from a very much a profiler point of view, but I hated it. I really, truly hated that movie and the book. But the problem of knowledge, whether it be through newspapers, media, news shows, even right here now. I mean, a criminal or somebody wants to commit a criminal act can find many ways to gather information. It's a lot easier today than it used to be. And so, yeah, some of them are more clever than they used to be. But then again, they still get caught because, like, the guy in the Gone Girl case, I mean, he left his freaking phone. Love it when they do that, because he got himself caught. He's like, he didn't expect the victims to fight back. And when they did, he dropped his phone. That did him in. So I love that. That's kind of awesome. But yeah, I mean, everything can do a little good and a little evil in the world, and it's that weird balance. It's like this show. I mean, I've had people, I speak up strongly against what I call grifters who do show after show after show and suck people in and suck their money and make a ton of money off of, talking about stuff that's nonsensical and facts that aren't facts, and then sending the public out there to harass people. I speak up against that because I am against that. And then there are those people who say to me, but Pat, you have a show on YouTube. You're doing the same damn thing. And so they have a point, but here's the problem. We can have no shows, or we can have grifter shows. We can have no news, or we can have agenda-driven media 24 hours a day that suck only there for making money and getting viewers and getting ratings. We can have no books, or we can have books that are good, or we can have books that are complete crap. So the problem is, what do we do as a society to have enough to educate and to entertain without being totally unethical about it? And it's a tricky situation. I quit TV because I felt like I was starting to become unethical in the fact I was supporting agendas. I mean, I was fighting back. I always spoke my mind, but I'm going to put up a video of my last appearance on CNN where I spoke against talking about mass murderers. And it was a great show because CNN, we had an agreement. I go on and we talk about the media's role in increasing mass murderers. And then they completely ignore what I came on for and said, so what do you think about this guy? I'm like, I'm not going to talk about it. And it got a lot of buzz, criminal profile blows up on the media, blows up against CNN. And that was the last time I did that, because I said, I'd taken a stand 3 years prior to not talk about mass murderers specifically. I'll talk about mass murders in general. I'll talk about the media's role in it, but I wouldn't talk about the specific mass murders. And I lost 50% of my work right there. I took that stand. But do I think there should be no news? Well, no, you've got to have some news. I'm not against that. I'm not against all of what mass media puts out, because we do need to know basic information. But I just think we need to do it in a way that's ethical. And the problem is the desire for ratings and money kind of destroys a lot of people's ethics, especially big companies' ethics. And so we have a problem with that. Just last week, I was asked by CNN and Newsmax to talk about the Gabby Petito case. Now think about it, folks. If I talked about the Gabby Petito case, underneath me, it would say Pat Brown's YouTube channel, Profiling with Pat Brown. Do you know how many new subscribers I'd have today if I'd only done those 2 damn shows? I'd have maybe, oh my God, I may have 20,000 new subscribers. But I didn't do the shows because I had nothing that I felt like I should offer to those shows. I turned them down and I got 2 new subscribers. You can have ethics, you can have money, or hopefully you can have ethics and you can have enough to live on, but that's the way it works. And so, I don't object to the media talking about cases. I mean, the Sherri Papini case was important at the time because if there were people out there kidnapping women off the streets, we need to know about it. We need to know if there's kidnappers loose doing these kind of things. In the Gone Girl case, we need to know that there's some home invasion guy who's coming in and kidnapping people. We also need to know if there are people out there hoaxing us and trying to rip us off. We do need to know that. So it's not that we don't need to know things. It's that we need to know things in a little bit more, what do I want to call it? Controlled fashion, a controlled fashion where we're not just talking about every single thing, every single moment, and having no purpose in doing so except for getting ratings. So I think that's important. So it's a really tough line, but I think we got to draw it at some point. And let's see, anybody else got anything to say? Oh, there's so many comments here. You can't keep up with them all. Oh, well, thank you, Nancy Drew. I'm a new subscriber. Got 3 new people. No, people always say, why don't I do certain things? So, and I have to be fair. I'm 66. I don't have to do things to make a career. I've been in television for over 15 years. I have books on the market. I don't have to do certain things to make, because I'm trying to make it. So it's a little unfair, when you're 30 years old and you're like, oh my God, you're being invited to do these shows. I mean, who can turn that down? And I have the luxury now of being able to turn stuff down because I can survive. I can, have a good time. I love to travel. I have my granddaughter. I can write books. I can do the show. I can not have 2 million subscribers and be okay. But I will give people credit for, I understand people want to be successful. So, not be a grifter, but be successful. But if you're one of my new subscribers, I thank you very much. Lisa says I'm one of two. Oh, I want to hear what she has to say. Oh, Nancy Drew. I love the name Nancy Drew. How many of you read Nancy Drew when you were growing up? So in my house, just to say this because it's kind of funny, I have two sisters. My oldest sister was always interested in nursing. So she read, can anybody tell me what books my oldest sister read? What series my oldest sister read? Let's see if anybody gets this right. My oldest sister read what series because she was a teenager who was interested in nursing. Does anybody know? Nobody's got this one? Okay, I'm going to give you now 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You blew it. Sherri Ames. Sherri Ames was the big. Oh, there Dorian came in just at the moment. Sherri Ames. Yes, that is true. Sherri Ames was. I never read this. I never wanted to be a nurse. Oh, interesting. Dee Dee says Hardy Boys. So my sister, she read Nancy Drew. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, she read Nancy Drew. I don't know why. I guess it was popular, but she never really wanted to be a detective. So that wasn't. But she did get the Nancy Drew books. I got the Dana Girl books, and then because I was interested in investigating in puzzles, I went over to the Hardy Boys books. So I did Nancy Drew, Dana Girls, and the Hardy Boys. So what does Doreen says? Doreen says I'm 65. That helps. I don't know what it helps, but we're still here, so that we got that to say for us. But I did love those stories, and I'm actually writing an interesting one, mystery story for teens. I gotta keep working on it. I got this really kind of cool one. But I've always loved. People ask about a profiler reads growing up, and it was Sherlock Holmes. It was absolutely Sherlock Holmes, and I've been a deductive profiler, in my later life, because I liked when people were logical and solved puzzles and not when they were just, nonsensical, which is so many of these things are these days. They've just gone into nonsensical land, so let me see what anybody else has to say about it. Oh dear. Some of these things, that's a great question. Anne Christine asks, if she had Munchausen, can it turn into a proxy? Thinking of the children. That is really interesting. And I don't, I'm now beginning to wonder how many studies there were ever done on that. Well, when you talk about the fact that it's really narcissism that's using manipulation for attention, there's no reason why you can't move it from yourself to your children. Especially if those annoying little children are taking the attention away from you. Let me tell you about an interesting thing that happened to me when I was working as a sign language interpreter. And I remember that this was such a major thing. So I knew this woman had Munchausen syndrome. So yeah, she would come in with lots of complaints. So she did have Munchausen syndrome. And then she had the baby. She would get pregnant. And while she was pregnant, she would come in and she'd claim that she had been bleeding and was having contractions. And they put her on the machine and everything, and the contractions were normal, she wasn't really bleeding. But she would claim that. She would always try to get a C-section early. It was just unbelievable. So one time I was there, and it was really this was a tragedy, and it was absolutely, I think, medical malpractice. So I was there interpreting, and she told them, I have pain, I'm having contractions, and I'm bleeding, and they put her on all the machines, and the doctor said, no, you're fine. Then the shift changed And a new doctor came in and checked everything again. And he said, okay, we're going to go for a C-section. She was thrilled. She was like, oh, yeah, I get a C-section. They did the C-section. The child was born too early, was born mentally disabled, deaf and blind, and ended up at the hospital for sick children in Washington, D.C. for an entire year. She was beside herself with joy. Do you know why? Because every time, first of all, she didn't have to care for the child. Yay, what a deal. You know, you get the child out of you don't have to care for it. And she got to go over to the hospital and have everybody go, oh, you poor dear, you poor dear, you poor dear. It's so nice you're coming to visit your little baby. She got so freaking much attention. Then a year later, the baby died. She got pregnant again. And I interpreted her for again. About 5 or 6 months into the pregnancy, she started coming in going, I'm having contractions. I'm having bleeding. She started lying again. This time, nobody listened to her. So she had the baby, full term, healthy baby. And she's in the room with the baby. And so here comes the nursing lady, and she's teaching her how to breastfeed. And she's like, and she's talking to the woman. She goes, oh, and how do I do this? Oh, I put the baby here. Oh, is that right? And then the nurse showed her how to do it. The breastfeeding, consultant showed her how to do it. And then the breastfeeding consultant walked out of the room, and she took that baby off her breast and chucked it into the crib and said, I hate breastfeeding. And then she said a most interesting thing. She said, and I don't really understand why everybody coming now is giving presents to the baby and not me. So you can see how narcissism works. She wanted attention. As long as the baby brought her the right attention, it was good for her. As long as the baby took away attention, it was bad for her. She had a bunch of children taken away from her by social services. I wasn't there for all of her history, but I wouldn't be surprised if she came in and lied about the children as well to get attention, so she could get attention for herself through the child. So you betcha. I think Munchausen syndrome is Munchausen syndrome by proxy are not that far apart. So excellent question. Absolutely excellent question. So very, very interesting. And here's another really interesting thing. Very few doctors recognize Munchausen syndrome by proxy. So a lot of times they just have no idea that the person is presenting that way. And another thing they do is they go from doctor to doctor to doctor, or hospital to hospital to hospital, so nobody remembers them. So that's another problem. A crib death is a really tricky issue. And this is one of these that gets everybody fired up, like false rape accusations. Because there are people who say no woman would ever say that she was raped if she wasn't. And that's not true. So what happens is you have people who truly were raped and should be paid attention to, and you have people who are lying, who are completely messing up this group. Same happens with crib death. You've got people who lost their child to crib death. I mean, I can't think of a worse thing to happen. I mean, well, I can. But, I remember my babies, and I can't imagine going in and finding them dead in their crib. Not that I had one, because they all slept with me, so the crib was a stuffed animal container. But that's just me. So anyway, my kids slept with me, and that's another whole thing. You're supposed to be able to roll. You're supposed to possibly roll over in a child and kill them, which, interestingly enough, is the way a lot of these crib deaths happen, where somebody supposedly is drinking too much and rolls over on their kid and smothers them because they don't wake up, because they don't realize they're laying on their child. But how do you know that wasn't on purpose? How do you know? Children left in a car. Most of the time you think it's got to be an accident. I mean, it's one of these things, you got confused. You didn't realize the baby was in the car and the child died of heat stroke in the car. But if you leave the baby accidentally in the car, can they prove it's murder? So, crib death can be murder. Child left in a car, quote, accidentally, can be murder. Rolling over in your baby can actually be murder. So it's very difficult for doctors, because a lot of times the autopsy is not going to show anything but suffocation or whatever, and it could be all accidental. I have a hard time proving it, and nobody wants to point at a grieving mother and saying, I think you actually murdered your kid. So they don't, and that's how they get away with it. So it's really very tricky, and unfortunately just a reality, and people don't realize how it can happen, and why there's sometimes accusations against parents. People say, how could you accuse the parents of that under a circumstance? It's because they know there are those times, but then there are other times when you're parents can be accused and they didn't do anything either. So, what an unfortunate, horrible situation. And I don't know there's any way around it. So let me see what else you have. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Okay. I'm just looking through all of your things now. Pat, who was that? Pat, who was that blonde news lady, Jessica Savage, who loved that book? I have no idea. I might know, but I don't remember. What book? What book are we talking about? I'm not sure. Now, Forever. Yes, they're still together. They're still they're there together with their family. And it's a really tough thing by the way, for children, because let's say that Sherri Papini was truly abducted. Then their children's mother is not necessarily a narcissist who created a hoax. She's a loving mother, and they grow up and they want to love their mother, and who wants to think that otherwise? But on the other hand, all that's out there in the world, and they're going to have to face that at some point. And I guess what usually happens to children is either they can accept it or they can't, or they can analyze their lives. And if they never saw from their mother any kind of behaviors like that, they would say, well, everybody was wrong. But on the other hand, they might grow up going, well, kind of think they might be right. It's all that depends on what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to face and be able to analyze yourself. And we all have these issues with our own parents as to why they did what they did, because parents are human beings. They're not perfect people. They struggle with their lives, and some have personality disorders, and some kids are born to people with horrific personality disorders. And it's not fun to be born to a psychopath. It's not fun to be born to a person with Munchausen syndrome, which is just, again, another version of narcissism / psychopathy. It's just a luck of the draw there. And there's all kinds of issues that we have to deal with growing up, and hopefully we survived them, and hopefully we understand that they were humans, and, they were who they were. And hopefully we can, now that we're adults, that we can recognize that shit happens, and has nothing necessarily to do with us growing up. We weren't bad kids or anything. Maybe we were, but we have to move on, and we have to then make our lives as good as we can make it. I always remember this was a comment by Dr. Laura, which always stuck in my head. She said somebody was telling her about their mother, who was clearly Munchausen's, and she was like still trying to gain her mother's love. And Dr. Laura said a very wise thing. She said, look, your mother's like a spider. She's got you in her web, and she'll eat you alive, and she's never going to not harm you. You have to get to the point where you understand you will never get your mother's love because your mother has no love to give. Now, I'm paraphrasing, so I don't know if she said it better than me or worse than me, but your mother has no love to give because it's not in her ability to do so because of her psychological problems. So at this point, you have to give that up and accept, that thank God you made it to where you are. Your mother did what she could in whatever conditions she had. Now it's time to separate. Stop seeking the love from somebody who can't give it, and make your own family and give your love over there and let them love you back and move on with your life. And I thought that was very, very good advice. So wait a minute, I'm not sure what this means. I bet Pat could say every word in the Webster Dictionary without swearing. Didn't I swear already in the show? I think I did swear already in the show. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but that's interesting. Let me see what else you have to say here. It's so fun to hear from all of you. Oh my God, it's just, this is one of the things I love about live, because it's just, you're not just speaking into a blank camera. Although I have to do my show and then try to get to you after the fact. It's not that I don't find, everything you're saying interesting. I just can't see it. And let's see, what's this? Oh, good point. Oh, and Christine, you're the winner. Okay, I'm going to give you the winner of the best questions of the night. These are great. I really love good questions, because sometimes I can't think of what to say, because there's so much to say. But when you ask really specific questions that are really intelligent, I love it. So Anne Christine says, but must proxy always be directed at children? Can it not be directed at other adults? Yes. And here's how it works. So adults that can't fight back. So Munchausen syndrome by proxy, and again, it's just basically narcissism that's using this as a methodology to gain attention. Nursing home, daycare providers have killed the children in their care. They're not their own children, but oh my God, they do love it when that child stopped breathing and they call 911 and they're trying to save the child's life, and then 911 call comes. They love that. Anesthesia. Oh, shoot, I'm not going to be able to say it. Anesthesia people, anesthesiologists. Anesthesiologists, I'm going to use that one. Oddly enough, there's kind of a high rate of weird stuff going on with anesthesiologists. Again, anesthesiologists, don't get mad at me. Most of you, 99.9% of you are just great people. But for some freaky reason, there are some who pick that profession because they love the concept of playing God, that I am providing the oxygen level that keeps them alive. And if I don't provide it, they die. And if I do provide it, they live. I get to play God. And that is one hell of a rush for certain people with narcissism. And then you see the ones who have killed their patients under their care because they love the fact that they were able to play God and murder them and get away with it oftentimes over and over again. So that's another version of that. Then we have nursing home nurses. Again, good God, there's some absolutely fabulous nursing home nurses who do, it's a hard job. I mean, it truly is a hard job. I mean, so many people say, oh, but those old people are so endearing. Some of them are not so endearing. They're exhausting. They have huge physical problems. I mean, they're peeing on themselves, they're shitting on themselves. I mean, it's not a pleasant thing. Some of them have Alzheimer's and they can become very angry. They can accuse you of stealing. There's so many unpleasant things that come along with the very cute old people that anybody who can work in a nursing home and not abuse the people there, God bless them all. God bless them. And then there are those who love the fact that they, again, control life and death over these patients. And these patients can't speak for themselves and can't probably fight back. So there are the nurses that put the pillow over the person's face. There are, and people always think an autopsy is always done, but that's not true. A lot of times, like for example, when let's say an 89-year-old person who has many, I'm going to see, I hate those big words, many conditions, and they're not doing well. Maybe they got terminal cancer or whatever, and they're at home alone, and then they're found dead. And they're not going to do an autopsy and all that kind of stuff necessarily. They're going to say, well, it was an expected death. The person finally died. But they, somebody might have helped them along a few months earlier because they wanted to get the money. But there's not always a medical examiner getting involved in a questionable death type of thing. If it's expected, they just go, because they can't spend a ton of money on things like that. So sometimes people are pushed a little faster to their deaths. And in nursing homes, the same thing. Everybody let's put it this way: good portion of people in a nursing home are terminal. That's why they're in a nursing home. They're not expected to live very long. And if they happen to die, they die. And if the nurse is really a good nurse and she or he is always there to comfort and all that stuff. And oh my God, quick, help! Mr. Smith is just coded. They may not be suspected as the person who coded them, but they get the thrill over, I have killed this person. I'm playing God. So Munchausen syndrome type thing goes over into daycare, nursing. It goes into anesthesiology. As far as, and sometimes, you get your black widows who, have their husbands come to an earlier death than they should for the same reasons. So yes, but to actually have a person take an adult and move them into, like, taking them to the doctor and claiming things that are happening to that person that isn't. I mean, that adult has their own mind and they can speak up. So probably that wouldn't happen. They may make claims against that adult, but usually not on quote behalf of them. So they need victims who can't speak up for themselves. So that's usually where it comes down to that. Oh Lord, what the heck? What happened with my niece? I hope she didn't do it on purpose. Oh, good Lord. Okay, I'm gonna take that one off of there. I hope nobody did. I mean, most of the time, I mean, when we talk about crib deaths, most crib deaths are crib deaths. I mean, they're horrible, horrible things that happen, and that are sort of unexplainable. And the child just stops breathing for whatever reasons. And here's what people need to do. If you look into the history of the mother, usually you see something amiss when it comes down to Munchausen syndrome by proxy, and the child dies. And the problem is a lot of times they don't look into the past. Like if they see the person is totally, has never had any questionable things in their past. Like I'm going to use myself an example. My first child, planned pregnancy, got pregnant, had a nice birth. I nursed her from the day she was born. She was perfectly healthy. I became a La Leche League leader, So, I don't have anything in my past which make you go, but there's people who, if they've already been to the doctor like 20,000 times, complaining about every single thing about the kid, and then you start getting real suspicious about their behaviors, or maybe their last child also died of crib death, maybe you ought to look more carefully at that to see whether it's really a true crib death or not. But they're very hard to prove. So that's why a lot of doctors are like, yeah, I'm not getting involved in this. And oddly enough, here's a fascinating fact. We don't care about babies nearly as much as we care about people who've been in the world 20 years. Take a look at Gabby Petito. The entire freaking world loves Gabby Petito now. There's people everywhere who are just so emotionally distraught over the death of Gabby Petito. But when a woman puts a baby in the dumpster, nobody particularly cares. Do you know why? Because the baby doesn't have a personality. Because you can't make a big story about a baby. It's a baby, It's there. What are you going to say about it? A baby, it's dead. We don't see massive memorials about little babies that are murdered, do we? We just go, oh well. It's kind of sad, but it's true. Absolutely true. Let's see what else we've got here. That was a very good question, Anna Christina. I really like great questions. It's so super. Oh, well, that's an interesting one. Pets too. Yeah, actually, that is true. But serial killers really love knocking off pets. And one of the things they talk about the triad with serial killers, they talk about bedwetting, fire, and pets. And it's not true of every serial killer, although we don't know because a lot of times nobody has a clue. But those are three things you can control when you're a child. You can wet your bed and piss off your mom. You can set the shed on fire, your neighbor's shed on fire. Nobody will catch you. And, you can't go very far. So, setting a fire locally works really well. And you get attention. I mean, you don't get attention, but you're like, hey, look what I did. And, killing a few animals in the neighborhood or maybe your own pets. You're playing God, and you're not going to go to prison for it. Really works. That's an interesting question about. Lisa says, I wonder what the McCann's twins think that they're teenagers and have access to the internet. It depends whether they, they've grown up with their parents. If their parents have given them love and affection and done everything for them, I think they would probably believe their parents and the pro-McCann people, most of the media that says their sister was kidnapped, and now they got a suspect in Germany who no doubt is the guy. And I say that I hope you know that I'm being facetious. But I don't really mind that the kids want to believe their parents. What good really will it do them to think otherwise? I mean, are we out there for kids to feel badly about their parents? I mean, if their kids can grow up and have received from their parents, in spite of whatever their parents may have done, enough love and affection to bring them to adulthood healthily, then hey, that's something good. And I'm just going to leave it at that's something good, because there's an awful lot of children in the world who they never get anywhere. I mean, they're orphans by the time they're 1. They're abused and brutalized in orphanages. They are put into the sex trade by the time they're 9 years old. So if you got a pair of parents who may have done something kind of wrong, but they raised you well enough, just consider yourself lucky. And I'm going to leave it at that, because it's not for us to prove to those kids anything. I mean, leave the kids alone. Let them believe what they want to believe, because you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe they are right. I may have my viewpoints on the McCanns and how I think that case goes. I may have my viewpoints on this particular case. I may have my viewpoints on a lot of cases. But kids, my opinion really is unimportant to you. So, I want you to be healthy. So whatever this profiler says, screw me, I'm also a philosopher. Well, sometimes, we're all philosophers, and, we all have our own way of thinking and believing in the world. So, let me see what else you have to say. Oh, that's nice, Charles. I learned from you in your show. I do hope so. That's why I do the show. Again, my show is not here so we can solve cases. I mean, I'm a criminal profiler who's worked cases, real cold cases, and I did solve them, couldn't bring them to prosecution. So I can't even do that as a professional a lot of times. I mean, we as the public also, we have to be realistic. I think we should learn. I think we should always be educated. We don't have to be angry. We don't have to be overly emotional. We shouldn't have to think we have to take our pitchforks and our torches and go out there and go after people. We don't have to do that. That's only time we need to speak up is when we think that, that there is malfeasance on the case of the police. And I don't mean that the police maybe didn't do the best job in the world, because they're just human beings too. But that, there's been some really crooked stuff. And that, in which case we, as a community, not necessarily a nation, if it's a local case, but as a community, we can say, hey, you're our police. We want to make sure that things are being handled properly. There's nothing wrong with discussing improvements, better methods of investigation, better methods of doing anything. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with being interested. So, and wanting to learn. So I think that's cool. And that's why I do that. So the show, because now I have the ability, because I'm not doing television anymore, to do the show the way I want to. So I want to see if there's anything else here. Oh, that's an interesting point. We had to ask for an autopsy for my 85-year-old mother. Yeah, sometimes you actually literally have to ask for the autopsy and push it, because autopsies, they take work, they're expensive, and so if they don't see a need to do it, they're not going to do it. And so if you are really concerned that something is amiss, that that something is a little bit sketchy here, and maybe somebody did do some harm to a loved one, you might want to request the autopsy. So, I don't remember this one. Beverly Elliott was a nurse who killed many babies in her care at the hospital. Scary stuff. I mean, my God, I can't imagine, and sometimes the hospitals are in a weird way in collusion, in that they don't want to get let the information out. Just like I said with Whole Foods. Let's say I called in and said, I had this food poisoning, and I say 30 other people called in and said, dang, I had food poisoning. They're not going to tell the press, So when the hospital has a baby die in their care, and they can just say, we think it's just crib death. It's a child has some abnormality, just whatever reasons. They don't want a lawsuit, and they don't want a massive investigation. And if they have any suspicions, they're like scared to death it's going to destroy their whole hospital. So a lot of times they will try to downplay something that probably shouldn't be downplayed. And unless we have set up a methodology where under any certain circumstance, there is going to be an investigation, regardless of your opinion, it's going to be an investigation. Sometimes these things slip through, and it gets really weird, because they'll have a nurse, for example, that 6 children have died under her care, or 6 elderly people have died under the care, and they'll fire her. And then she'll go to another hospital, or he'll go to another hospital, and 6 more people will die. And on the 3rd hospital, wait a minute. How come every time this person is somewhere, somebody dies? And then finally they get caught up. Let's see what this one is. In Idaho, an at-home death without an official present automatically opens a homicide investigation. Interesting. Without an official present. Even so, Chad Daybell's young wife died of natural causes. Young, no autopsy, now murdered. Yeah, the Daybell wife, I don't know how the heck that went through. I haven't done anything on the Daybells yet, but what a freaky case that was. And she's a youngish woman, and she suddenly dies, and they're like, okay, whatever. You didn't question that? You know, probably put it down to COVID. Kind of useful, you know, kind of useful all the time. Whether dying of COVID or with COVID is two different things. A good movie. Oh, somebody said a favorite movie is Black Widow. I do not know that one, but Nancy Drew says it's a good movie. I don't know it yet, so I'd have to look at it, and probably I'll hate it, but you know how that works. Martin says they'll be thinking, why can't I buy Pat Brown's book on Amazon? Thank you, Martin. I'll send you that. I'll send you the money in the mail. And for you who don't know what Martin's talking about, it's my book called it's the Profile of the Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. It's $2.99. You cannot buy it on Amazon. You can buy every one of my other books on Amazon, but not that one, because the McCanns had their solicitors, they're called Carter Ruck, the top libel solicitors in the world, threatened Amazon with a libel suit if they didn't pull my book off the market. Amazon freaked out. They're like, yeah, we're not making enough money off this book. So they pulled my book off of sales, and it's still available at Smashwords and Barnes and Noble and Cobain and all that, but it's not available on Amazon. So yeah, so that's why it's missing, which just really sucks, because I was actually doing very well with that book when it came out, but it was pulled, and but it is still available. Smashwords is where I send people, and so it does exist. But Amazon, people ask me if I was angry at Amazon. I'm like, Amazon doesn't want to get sued. And since it was a self-pub, most of my books are not self-pub, but that book was. And because publishers won't touch the subject unless you're pro McCann and you're going to write a wonderful book saying they are totally innocent and a pedophile did it. They won't touch the book. And so I self-published it. And Amazon's like, yeah, we're not going down because you don't have a publisher and a big legal team. So we're not going to play with that. So I can't blame them. I mean, I would have done that too. So, what's this? Oh yeah, Dr. I've forgotten about him. Philby says, Dr. Harold Shipman. I am from where he practiced, and he was really? And he was my doctor for a while. I remember having a cup of tea with him when he came around to my house to see my dad. Wow, that's creepy. For all of you who don't know who Dr. Harold Shipman is, I know he's a bad guy. I know his name, and I'm trying to remember the case because it's in the UK. And oh my God, not a good guy. Was he a serial killer? I can't quite remember, but I think he was. But I can't remember who he killed off. But that's really creepy. That's the thing about serial killers, though. A lot of us have come in contact with serial killers and don't realize it, because after all, what do serial killers do? They get up in the morning. They go to work, and at the workplace, they might know 30 people. And then they go to the store and they meet 30 more people. And then they go to the gym and they meet some more people. So, we run into serial killers all the time, but because serial killers aren't interested in killing us or don't have the opportunity to kill us, we just don't think about it. And then one day, like sometimes 20 years later, we find out that, oh my God, the guy that I worked with is a serial killer? Can't believe it. Because serial killers live normal lives 95% of the time. And they have their psychopathic behaviors, but in passing, people don't really recognize them. So, but they're out there, and we often don't even know it. And sometimes they end up, killing people and dying off before anybody even finds out who they are. And then we never think they even existed. And they go to their graves being wonderful people. So that's kind of funny. That's very nice, Annie. I didn't see you here. Thanks, Pat. Great time today. I love you, Annie. I'm always happy to have you here. So this one should be a podcast. Oh, which one? I don't know if you're talking about this show or some other show, but but by the way, just to point out, because I don't do podcasts, and the reason I don't want to do a podcast, by the way, is because I like to be able to see pictures and stuff, and just doing it radio style kind of bores me. It's just kind of like lonely and dark. And also, I don't do more than one show about a case. And so podcasts usually are shows like 20 shows on one case, and I refuse to do that because, again, I've already said what I got to say about Sherri Papini's case. I want you to understand about Munchausen. I want you to understand about hoaxes. I want you to understand about what the police went through. I want you to understand the case. I'm not intending to solve the case or pretend to solve the case, because almost all the podcasts out there are not actually solving cases. They're just getting subscribers. So, I like that. That's lovely. Okay. Restlessly striving until I'm hopelessly. That's an interesting name. True. Internet. I don't know what the question is here, but I like the answer. True. Internet can allow for a more educational experience that doesn't dehumanize people just because they happen to have died. We can be more educational about everything, but I'll tell you one thing that's happened over time, because this is certainly true about teaching and being a professor. If you don't entertain your class, you lose them really quick. We used to be people that needed a lot less excitement, that learning was excitement enough. We used to be people who could practice a musical instrument for an hour every day. And now people are like, yeah, I'm not doing that. We used to be people who could read a long book quietly under a tree. But we're not good at doing that anymore because we're so used to the electronics. I pointed out to some people the other day, I said, ever since I got this food poisoning, I watched 4 different movies, and 3 of them were the triad of end of the world movies. Called Testament was one. Another one is called Threads, and the third one is The Day After. Look, I remembered 3 things. Oh, wow. So that's the triad of end of the world movies. And they were, by the way, all 3 of those movies are really good if you really want to either be depressed or feel better, because we're not quite there yet. What way you want to look at it. But I watched the triad, and 2 of them specifically were back in time, and it was kind of pleasant, before before the nuclear stuff blew up everything and all life went to hell. Before that moment, they showed life, the pleasant life of a family and different families in the town. And it was kind of nice. There was no internet. There were no cell phones. You saw people, sewing, and you saw dad in the garage, and, kind of the days I grew up in. And you saw the household was quieter. The child was doing their homework. Somebody was playing the piano or the oboe. It was kind of awesome. But we have, because of the way life goes on, we have a more electronic life. We have more incoming information at such a rate that we have become kind of adrenaline freaks. And we have a hard time sitting down and doing things quietly for ourselves, to do hobbies, to knit, to read, all these things. Very difficult for us to do these days. And so one of the problems is spilled over into the internet and into the mass media, that we're unable to do things that are more educational, because if you're not exciting enough, you're not going to get people to follow you. And this is true. I mean, as I say, I know the people that have massive followers are the ones who can be really cool and be really entertaining. I hope I'm a little entertaining so you're not bored out of your mind. But, being educational is much harder. And I'm really pleased with the people I see doing the more educational style channels. And I've been promoting some of them because I like Ken Maines. I've been promoting Peter Hyatt, Dr. Grande. Is that his name? The 3 of them, at least, speak in a very modulated voice. Probably I'm much more, quote, entertaining and more crazy than they are, but I do appreciate the way that they're presenting, because they're presenting facts, they're presenting analysis. Again, I always point out, I don't always agree with their conclusions. They may not agree with mine, but I find them very educational, and I find them to be not grifters. And I love their stuff, and I'm willing to listen to what they have to say, because I respect the way they come across. So I just want to point that out. So at any rate, I think we're coming to it's 5 o'clock. I've been here for 2 hours. I just want to see if there's anything else. Anything else? I hate missing out on some of your cool things that you're saying. I know some of you are running away because you're like, I've been here too long. That's okay. But some of you are still here. Oh, there it is. Oh, he killed hundreds of his patients. Would never guess meeting him. Wow. I have to look into him. I'm going to do a whole series on serial killers, not on specifically that how cool they are and what cool things they did, but just how they're very interesting, how the police investigations worked with that, how they were able to perpetrate these kind of crimes in society for so long and get away with it. So I think that's what he did. Oh, okay, Lorraine. Harold Shipman killed with morphine in their own homes. He was seen as a pillar of the community. Yeah, and yeah, pillar of the community. And the word doctor comes with you, and you assume certain things that this is a person who's safe to be around, and the person who's going to obviously take care of a patient because they want to help patients and not kill them. But you never know. Wow. Shipman may have killed more than 215 people. I want to point out about serial killer numbers. It's really hard to say because serial killers themselves, let's say they killed 12 people. They're happy to say they killed 120 people instead of 12. They'll just multiply that because they want to be the biggest and baddest of all time. And the more they claim they did, the more options they have to go out for, I did this too. Okay, well, we'll take you out for some hamburgers if you'll talk some more. Well, if you show us where the gravesite is, we'll buy you McDonald's. So they'll talk shit and claim they did things they didn't do. And also, the police don't mind pinning a whole bunch of murders on one serial killer if they can get away with it because they can close down a whole bunch of cases and get them off of their backs. They know these cases are never going to be solved. So there's like 20 cases, they're not going to be solved. So we think he did all those 20 cases. Let's take them off the books. Never happens, right? Yeah. And then the media likes to pump things up too. So it's hard to tell where the truth is on those things. So to me, I don't attribute any murders to anybody that aren't proven. So we'll stay with that. Let's see. Let's see what. Oh my God, Lisa saw Threads. Threads scared the heck out of me when I was younger. That's a very. Who was this? Was it Martin? Was it you who said, "Oh, it's got such an uplifting ending"? It's like, yeah. End of the world films that have nuclear involvement. The films don't end well, and I have to give them credit for not ending well because you kind of sometimes waited for like, oh, there's going to be somebody who's going to take the humans into the future. There's going to be some happy ending. Man, there weren't any happy endings. Yeah, it's kind of depressing, but cool. No need to. What the hell is that? Okay, what the hell is a cinnamon challenge? What is a cinnamon challenge? I don't know what that is. Oh, that's an interesting one. Kari says Munchausen syndrome seems to have a parallel to somatic symptom disorder, but civil liability, fraudulently obtaining disability benefits instead of criminal liability. It's narcissism. Again, it's a way to get over, because there's two things about getting over. And well, disability benefits, you get money and you get a thrill of getting over. So sometimes it comes with a combined thrill. They just said that there were these dudes who just got like $2.5 million worth of Maryland unemployment benefits, which really pissed me off because I know people who they've been waiting to get their unemployment benefits for the last 6 months, even though they turned in all the paperwork. And then these crooks turn in phony paperwork and they're like clearing a huge amount of money. That's really annoying, but they're probably having a really good time because not only did they get the money, but they got the thrill of suckers, so don't downplay the thrill of suckers along with a nice compensation. They go together really well. Well, that's true and not true, Anna. The Green River Killer forgot how many he killed because the women didn't mean anything to him. I like half of that statement is very true because a lot of times once you're done with somebody, for some serial killers, the whole point is just the actual moment of killing. It's like that's your big ass thrill, and after that you could care less who they are. I liken that to guys go to a bar and pick up a girl and they have sex with her and they can't remember her name maybe 24 hours later, maybe even an hour later, don't remember the girl's name, And if you asked him a year later, what girls did you sleep with this year? He's like, I don't know. I don't know the number. I don't know their names. I had a good time, and that was that. Serial killers can be the same way, so they don't remember. On the other hand, he could just claim that because they're pathological liars. So you never knew because they never tell the truth. So you can't believe them no matter what they say. I don't remember because I didn't care, or I do remember and I killed 200. Which one's the truth? Unless you can prove it, we don't know. We absolutely don't know. So that's the whole point for me. That again, evidence. And you know, we and I'm not saying in our own private lives we can't have our personal opinion outside of evidence. We all do. You know, that's what private lives are about. That's why we sit with somebody with a glass of wine and go, I think they did it. You know, you know. But when we're out in public, as a profiler, I try to stick with the evidence. What do we know, and what conclusions can we make based on what we actually know to be true, as opposed to all the gossip out there and a bunch of, you know, my personal feelings are this could never have happened. Your personal feelings, you know, you can have them. You can have your personal opinion, but my point is always, you know, is that really proof? Just because you have personal feelings about something. I mean, you don't like somebody, you don't like somebody. This is a problem in the court of law, because do you like the defendant or don't you like the defendant? Do you like the victim or don't you like the victim? And people really get swayed by that stuff because, you know, and that's what happens with a lot of the defense teams, because by the time goes by and the guy who did the killing 20 years ago has spiffed himself up and learned all the methods of being, you know, really, really appealing, then you look at that guy and you go, I just can't, you know, he seems like such a nice guy. I just can't believe he would kill anybody. But I'll tell you something very interesting about serial killers, and people will tell you this. They'll turn on a dime. They will turn on a dime. Somebody will be with somebody, they'll smile on their face, and a second later, they're choking them to death. They turn just like that. So just because you feel something about somebody, they look like a nice person, they seem like a nice person, they were perfectly fine till 3:04. Doesn't mean at 3:05 they weren't murdering you. Got to remember that. So it's a scary thing, but it is definitely a truth about psychopaths. So anyway, I guess I should take off. Thank you for being here today. I'm glad I was here today, and I don't have COVID as far as I know. My test was negative, yay! And I think I just had 5 days worth of food poisoning. God, such fun. And I'll never see. No, Whole Foods, could you give me $10 to pay for the salads that you did that to me? And I got 5 days trapped in my house watching end of the world movies. And if you went to my Facebook page, you can see the towel animal I made, which is a cobra. And it's pretty sad 5 days, let me tell you. I felt bad enough not to really want to do much because I kept running to the bathroom and having pain and all that stuff. But it's like 5 days wasted just doing stupid stuff. But hey, you know, I don't have COVID and I'm still here, so I'm not going to be bitchy about it. I'm not going to complain too much. I'm happy that I'm feeling pretty decent right now. So Doreen says, thank you, Pat. Glad to hear you don't have COVID. Yeah, me too. I mean, you know, my son did get COVID back in March of 2020. Yeah, and he's still suffering from long hauler symptoms. So I wouldn't wish that on anybody, and I personally do not want it. And I know a lot of people have lost their lives over it. So nasty stuff. Definitely nasty stuff. So nighty night, everybody. Bye-bye red rum. Bye-bye. And it goes, Connie the Cobra. Yeah, I named it Connie because otherwise you might not. Connie the Cobra, because Connie, you might look at Connie and go, what the hell is that? It's a cobra. So it's Connie the Cobra. And thank you, Christine. Thank you, Kat. You're just wonderful. Thank you, Pink. I do feel better. I feel better. Hey, did you see me leave the camera and run to the, like, excuse me, I got 1 minute. I'll be right back. I didn't have to do that. So I'm really thrilled. Stay well, Pat. No more salad bars. I mean, my God, now I'm never going to get a refund. Towel snake. You know why I made a towel snake, Christine? Because I'm very untalented. The towel snake was the easiest towel animal I could make. But before I go, the story on the towel animals is, so I used to do cruises I used to do cruise ship speaking. And when I spoke on the cruise ship, I got a free cruise. And so I went on Celebrity and I went on Norwegian, and I loved, those were really good cruises. And, you arrive in your stateroom, and oh my God, there's a cute little towel animal on your bed. It's a flamingo or whatever. And I just have this freaky thing for towel animals. So then I did this cruise ship speaking engagement with the Queen Mary. And I went to my stateroom, and there was no towel animal. I mean, there was no towel animal. My bed was like empty. And where was my towel animal? I was so upset, And so ever since then, I realized I have this weird love of towel animals. I don't know what it is about them, but I love towel animals. So I made a snake. So there you go. It wasn't very, very, very great looking towel snake, but you got to start somewhere. So anyway, I hope to see you next week. And if you want to join for the hangout during the week, go below and you can join the Friends of Profiling of Pat Brown. That's the hangout. Then you can join the hangout and ask me questions and mess with me midweek. And we have a small group that hangs out, and it's fun, and some really cool questions come up, and we have a good time. And otherwise, just please subscribe, like the channel, and support the channel so I can hang around a little bit longer, because I'm not going to be a grifter, and so I need something to keep going. Bye, Dee Dee. So awesome. So anyway, see you all next time. Sometimes people go, what are you doing next week? I never know. But sometimes it depends on what happened last week. And this one came to mind this week because of the whole search for Gabby Petito, what that became a big thing. And then, this is why I decided to do this particular case this week, because of, how we get involved and how we have interest in things and what we think based on what we think we know. So anyway, night, everybody. It was great being here, and see you next time. Always fun.